I'm Detective Marcus Hale, and I need to tell you about the case that made me question everything I thought I knew about death, evidence, and the hunger for power that runs through the veins of America's wealthiest families. 3 days ago, I stood in the private cemetery of the Voss estate, watching as Trenton Voss's mahogany and gold-inlaid coffin was lowered into the earth. The air smelled of fresh-turned soil and the sickeningly sweet perfume of 1,000 white roses. I remember the weight of the moment, the finality of it. Trenton Voss, the man who controlled 40% of the world's refined gold market, the billionaire who could move markets with a single phone call, was dead at 58. Heart attack, the medical examiner had ruled. Sudden, but not suspicious for a man who'd lived on cigars, scotch, and the kind of stress that comes with managing an $18 billion empire. I watched his widow, Celeste, a striking woman in her early 50s with silver blonde hair and a black Chanel dress that probably cost more than my annual salary. She wept quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. His children stood on either side of her. Declan, 32, tall and broad-shouldered with his father's steel-gray eyes, stared at the coffin with an expression I couldn't quite read. His sister Sienna, 28, had her mother's delicate features, but none of her composure. She trembled, her fingers gripping a single white rose so tightly I thought the thorns might draw blood. The funeral was attended by senators, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries. I was there because that's what senior detectives do when prominent citizens die, even of natural causes. We pay our respects. We observe. We make sure everything is as it should be. Everything was as it should be, until this morning. My phone rang at 7:15 a.m., jolting me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Raymond Chen, head of forensic analysis at the Voss Refining Company's private laboratory. His voice shook in a way that made my blood run cold. "Detective Hale, you need to come to the foundry. Now. There's something. I don't know how to explain this over the phone." 40 minutes later, I was standing in the heart of the Voss Refining Company, surrounded by the roar of furnaces and the acrid smell of molten metal. The foundry was a cathedral of industry, all steel catwalks and massive crucibles glowing orange with liquid gold heated to nearly 2,000 degrees. Dr. Chen met me at the entrance, his face pale, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "Show me," I said. He led me to a climate-controlled laboratory adjacent to the main foundry floor. On a steel examination table lay a gold bar, still slightly warm, its surface gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. The bar bore the Voss Company seal and a timestamp, 06:43:07, November 21st, this morning. "We conduct routine quality control on every batch," Dr. Chen explained, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled up data on a computer screen. "Part of that process involves checking for contaminants. We found organic material in this bar, specifically human epithelial cells and sweat. Fresh biological material that survived the initial heat exposure, because it was introduced during the final cooling phase." I felt my jaw tighten. "That's not unusual in a facility with workers, is it?" "No," Dr. Chen said. "What's unusual is whose DNA it is." He turned the screen toward me, and I saw the results of the analysis, cross-referenced with the Voss family database that existed for security clearance purposes. The DNA belongs to Trenton Voss. And detective, the cellular degradation analysis indicates this biological material is less than 12 hours old. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table. "That's impossible. Trenton Voss has been dead for 5 days. I watched them close his coffin. I watched them lower him into the ground." "I know," Dr. Chen whispered. "I was at the funeral too, but the science doesn't lie. This DNA is fresh. Someone with Trenton Voss's genetic profile touched this gold bar during the casting process this morning." My mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Contamination from old samples? Dr. Chen shook his head before I could even voice it, showing me the meticulous chain of custody. The samples were clean, the testing repeated 3 times. Falsified results? But why? And by whom? Who had access to the foundry last night and this morning? I asked, forcing my detective's brain to override my shock. The night shift ended at 6 a.m., Dr. Chen said, but there's a gap in our security footage from 4:30 to 6:15. The system shows a maintenance reset. After the shift change, the morning supervisor, Thomas Brennan, discovered this bar already cast and cooling. He thought the night shift had done an extra run. I need the names of everyone on that night shift, and I need to speak with the family. Dr. Chen's expression darkened. Detective, there's something else. This foundry has been in the Voss family for 3 generations, but only 3 people alive know the precise technique for casting Voss gold bars. It's a proprietary process, a family secret. Trenton was one of them. And the other 2? Declan Voss and Sienna Voss. The pieces were there, scattered like shrapnel, but they didn't form any picture that made sense. I left the foundry with the gold bar secured as evidence, my mind churning through impossible scenarios. The November sun was pale and weak, offering no warmth as I drove to the Voss estate, a sprawling compound of modernist glass and steel nestled in the hills overlooking the city. Celeste Voss received me in a sitting room that could have been featured in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of perfectly manicured gardens. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark slacks, her composure recovered since the funeral. But I noticed the way her fingers worried at her wedding ring, a massive diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like trapped stars. "Detective Hale," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "I wasn't expecting you. Is there a problem with Trenton's estate proceedings? Mrs. Voss, I need to ask you some questions about your husband's death and the family business." Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, anger. It vanished too quickly for me to be sure. "Of course. Please sit." I didn't sit. I needed to watch her reactions, needed to see every micro-expression. "Were you aware of any threats against your husband before his death? Anyone who might have wanted to harm him or the company?" "Trenton was a powerful man," Celeste said carefully. "Power always creates enemies, but nothing specific, no. The medical examiner said it was his heart. Are you suggesting otherwise?" "I'm suggesting," I said slowly, watching her face, "that there are irregularities that require investigation. Can you tell me where you were between 4 and 7 this morning?" Now the fear was unmistakable. "I was here, sleeping. Why? What's happened? Where were Declan and Sienna?" "Declan stayed in the guest house last night. Sienna has her own apartment downtown." "Detective, you're frightening me. What is this about?" Before I could answer, Declan Voss walked into the room. He'd inherited his father's commanding presence, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. His eyes, however, held something darker. Suspicion, calculation. "Detective," he said, his voice cold. "My mother doesn't need to be interrogated in her own home. If you have questions about my father's business, you can direct them to our attorneys. This isn't about business, Mr. Voss. This is about evidence. Evidence that suggests your father's death may not have been as straightforward as we believed." Celeste stood abruptly. "What are you saying? That someone killed Trenton?" "I'm saying that evidence has emerged that doesn't make sense. And until I understand it, I need to know where everyone in this family was early this morning." Declan's jaw clenched. "I was at the guest house, alone. I've been staying there since the funeral because this house, it's too full of him. Every room, every corner. I needed space." "Can anyone verify that?" "No," he said flatly. "I was alone." "And you, Mrs. Voss, is there anyone who can confirm you were here?" Her face paled. "The staff doesn't arrive until 8. I was alone as well. I felt the familiar weight of an investigation turning dark. I need to speak with Sienna." "She's not here," Celeste said quickly. "She left early this morning. She said she needed to be alone, to process everything." "Where did she go?" "I don't know," Celeste whispered, and I believed her. The fear in her voice was genuine. I left the Voss estate with more questions than answers. Sienna Voss wasn't answering her phone. Her apartment was empty, the doorman confirming she'd left at 5 a.m. and hadn't returned. I put out a discreet bolo, nothing that would alert the media. The last thing I needed was a media circus around a case I didn't even understand yet. Back at the station, I reviewed everything we had on Trenton Voss's death. The medical examiner's report showed a massive coronary event. Toxicology was clean, no signs of foul play. But the ME hadn't been looking for foul play. I requested a deeper analysis, specifically looking for substances that could induce cardiac arrest but metabolize quickly. Potassium chloride, digitalis, certain paralytic agents. While I waited for results, I dove into the Voss family history. What I found was a dynasty built on gold and secrets. Trenton's grandfather had founded the company in 1952, capitalizing on post-war gold speculation. Trenton had expanded it into a global empire, but not without cost. There were rumors of ruthless business practices, competitors mysteriously losing contracts, whistleblowers who suddenly went silent. And then there was the will. I'd subpoenaed Trenton's legal documents, and his attorney, a nervous man named Gerald Whitmore, had delivered them with shaking hands. The will was dated 3 months before Trenton's death. It was unusual. The bulk of the estate, including controlling interest in Voss Refining, went to Declan. But there was a provision. A strange, specific provision. If Declan could not prove his competency in the art of gold refinement, within 6 months of Trenton's death, control would pass to Sienna. And if neither child could prove competency, the entire company would be liquidated and the proceeds donated to charity. Competency in the art of gold refinement. The secret family technique. The thing only 3 people knew. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen. Security footage recovered. You need to see this. I drove back to the foundry through gathering dusk, my mind a storm of theories. The footage had been corrupted but partially restored by the company's IT security team. Dr. Chen led me to a viewing room where a technician had the video queued up. This is from camera 7, overlooking the main casting area, the technician said. 4:48 a.m. The footage was grainy, pixelated in places where the recovery was incomplete, but I could make out a figure entering the foundry floor, moving with purpose toward the casting stations. The figure wore protective gear, the kind all foundry workers used. But something was off about the movements. They were too confident, too familiar. The figure approached one of the cooling bars, leaned over it, and appeared to touch the surface. The timestamp read 04:52:17. Then the figure looked up, directly at the camera, and for just a moment the face was partially visible before digital corruption obscured it again. "Can you enhance that?" I asked. "I tried," the technician said, "but I can tell you this. Based on body measurements and movement analysis, the person in this footage is approximately 5'7", slender build, consistent with Sienna Voss's physical profile." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Where is she?" "Detective," Dr. Chen interrupted, his voice strained. "There's more. We found something else on the bar, carved into the cooling gold. So faint we almost missed it. 2 words. He lives." The room spun. I steadied myself against the desk, forcing myself to breathe, to think. He lives. What kind of message was that? A taunt? A confession? A delusion? I spent the next 6 hours tearing apart Sienna Voss's life. Her apartment, with the landlord's permission, revealed a woman on the edge. Half-packed boxes, papers scattered across a desk showing financial records of the company, and a journal, leather-bound and filled with pages of increasingly erratic handwriting. I sat on her couch, under the cold glow of a lamp, and read. The entries started months ago, detailing her frustration with being overlooked by her father. How Declan was the heir, the chosen one, while she was just as skilled, just as capable. How she'd mastered the family technique in secret, spending nights in the foundry when her father thought she was traveling. Then the entries turned darker. 3 months ago, she wrote, "Father announced the new will today, his sick test, his way of making us compete even from the grave. But I know the truth. Declan will fail. He doesn't understand the gold like I do. He never did. 2 months ago, I've learned something terrible. Father is planning to change the will again. He's going to leave everything to Celeste with instructions to sell the company. He's destroying our legacy, our birthright. 1 month ago, I can't let him do this. The company is our blood, our name. I have to stop him. And then, the final entry, dated the day before Trenton's death. Tonight it ends. He'll never destroy what we built. The gold will remember. It always remembers. My hands shook as I closed the journal. I called for backup, for a warrant for Sienna's arrest. We needed to find her before she disappeared or, God forbid, hurt herself or someone else. But fate moved faster than I did. At 11 p.m., I received a call from Celeste Voss. Her voice was barely recognizable, shredded by screaming. "She's here. Detective, please, she's here, and she has a gun and she's saying terrible things. Please." I broke every speed limit getting to the Voss estate. Squad cars converged from 3 directions. We found Sienna in the main house, in Trenton's study, holding a revolver loosely in one hand. Celeste and Declan were on their knees in front of her, both pale as ghosts. "Sienna," I said, my voice as calm as I could make it despite the adrenaline screaming through my veins. "Put the gun down. Let's talk about this." She looked at me, and I saw madness and grief warring in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "None of you understand. He was going to destroy everything. The company, the legacy, everything our family built. So you killed him," I said quietly. "You found a way to induce a heart attack." "I didn't want to," she screamed. "But he wouldn't listen. He was going to sell it all, give it to strangers. The company is our soul, detective. Without it, we're nothing. I couldn't let him do that." "And the DNA on the gold bar?" I asked. "The message?" Sienna laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "I wanted Declan to know. I wanted him to understand that Father's legacy lives on through me. I stole Father's hairbrush, collected his epithelial cells, and transferred them during the casting. I left the message. He lives, because he does, detective, in the gold, in the company, in me. You staged an impossibility to torment your brother? I staged a miracle," she whispered, "to prove I'm worthy, to prove I understand what this family is about in a way Declan never will." The standoff lasted another 20 minutes before Sienna finally, mercifully, put the gun down. We arrested her for the murder of Trenton Voss. The enhanced toxicology came back positive for a rare plant extract that mimicked cardiac arrest and metabolized within hours. Sienna had studied botany in college. She'd had the knowledge and the means. But as I watched her being led away in handcuffs, watched Celeste collapse into Declan's arms, watched this family's empire crumble under the weight of its own ambition, I couldn't shake one terrible question. The DNA was real. 12 hours old, Dr. Chen had said. Not transferred from an old hairbrush. Fresh. Living cells. I went back to the cemetery 3 days later, alone. I stood at Trenton Voss's grave, looking at the disturbed earth, the wilting flowers. I thought about exhumation orders, about opening that coffin, about confirming what was inside. But I didn't, because some truths are more dangerous than lies. Some questions are better left unasked. Sienna Voss sits in a psychiatric facility now, awaiting trial. She maintains her story about the collected DNA. The prosecutors believe her. The evidence supports her. But late at night, when I close my eyes, I see that gold bar gleaming under laboratory lights. I see those 2 words carved into cooling metal. He lives. And I wonder if Sienna Voss killed her father at all. Or if she discovered something far more terrifying. Something about the gold, about the foundry, about the secrets that $18 billion can buy and bury. Something that made her snap not from guilt, but from knowledge no one should possess. The case is officially closed. Trenton Voss died of induced cardiac arrest. His daughter murdered him to protect the family legacy. Justice, such as it is, will be served. But I know what I saw. I know what the science showed. And I know that sometimes, in the halls of power and wealth, the impossible becomes real. The dead don't always stay buried. And gold, that eternal metal that never tarnishes, never forgets, might remember things we desperately wish it would forget. So I'm asking you, because I genuinely don't know anymore. If you could secure your legacy, protect everything you'd built, by crossing a line that shouldn't exist, would you? And if that line involved not just murder, but something beyond death itself, would you have the courage to walk away? Or would you, like the Voss family, let the gold consume everything, including your humanity? Subscribe to this channel and leave your like for more stories of crimes, secrets of powerful families, and investigations that no one dares to tell. Until the next case.